Today, with the day off and nice weather, I invited my mother-in-law for a walk. We strolled through the neighborhood park, soaking up the sunshine. Suddenly, my husband Ethan called. "It's serious. Mom seems to have collapsed." I was puzzled. "What, Olivia? She's right next to me." Despite my confusion, Olivia smiled and whispered, "It's our little secret." She put a finger to her lips, ensuring Ethan couldn't hear. "I'll be back by next Tuesday. See you," Ethan said before hastily ending the call. What in the world? A few days later, Ethan returned home. "How is Olivia?" I asked. He looked serious. "She's not doing too well. We might not have much time left with her." "I see," I replied. Since then, Olivia and I have been in regular contact, preparing for what might come next. Ethan, oblivious, started fiddling with his smartphone and muttered, "After all this time." Right after that, "Will you marry me?" In the 5th year since I moved to New York, at a fancy restaurant where such an idea would have been unthinkable in the past, I was proposed to by the boyfriend I met here. Today is the happiest day of my life. I had vowed to live with this man. I am Amanda. I moved to the city after my parents passed away, a working adult who grew up sheltered in the countryside. When I first came to New York, I was shocked by the tall buildings and the crowds, and I froze up for a while. But as a country person who had never been to a city before, there were many things I didn't understand. Back home, it was customary to talk to someone's neighbors every time you went out. Of course, working in a company was also unfamiliar at first, and I made many mistakes. What were you doing at first? I was a clerk at a commercial company. There aren't many places that would hire a country bumpkin who wasn't even a fresh graduate. While eating the stylishly arranged food, my boyfriend, no, my fiancé, Ethan, and I talked about old times. Really, why did you switch to working at a library? Was it something to do with your workplace? No, I got along moderately well with everyone, but the company was incredibly toxic. Definitely, coming to New York suddenly, you wouldn't know which companies were risky. Exactly, and at that time, I didn't even realize it was what you'd call a toxic workplace. Just being overworked, but I thought that was normal for the city. Getting used to it is scary. At the time, I would have taken any job. I needed to make money fast because I was running out due to moving and funeral expenses. Compared to back home, the salary here is higher and there are more trains, so there's no risk of missing one and not being able to get home. But I was naive to think that reality was not so sweet. The company I finally got a job with required me to start early and return on the last train every day. There were only 30 minutes for lunch, and of course, leaving during the day was not allowed. I was saving money, but there was no time to spend it. At first, I truly thought that was normal, so that was tough. But why did you decide to become a librarian? I had gotten my librarian's license in college, but when I first came here, the library was too far away, and I gave up. But then I quit my job and moved, and thankfully got rehired. Wow, was there a specific incident that made you quit? There was an old lady crouching in front of my hospital. I helped her to the station, but then I was late. I got really yelled at as if to vent my daily stress. Besides being late, I was also scolded for about 3 hours for always being slow at my tasks and for my unkempt appearance. The face of my boss at that time was traumatic. "Yeah, you were just trying to help someone, right?" And that's when I realized this company was no good, and I handed in my resignation that day. "You're really proactive. I respect that. We wouldn't have met if not for that, so I'm grateful." Indeed, I hope that elderly lady is doing well. Since that day when I switched jobs and started working at the library, my life has changed dramatically. I actually have days off and can take paid leave. The people at work are very kind, and they patiently taught me, the newcomer. My salary is less than when I worked at the toxic company, but being able to work surrounded by books that I love is very fulfilling. It was while working in this healthy workplace that I met Ethan. Searching for books after several meals together, we started dating. I am just thankful to the book that brought us together. Oh, right, I want to go and tell my mom about us sometime soon. Do you have a free day? How about next Sunday? Okay, I'll let Mom know. She's a bit stern, but not a bad person. She'll approve of you, don't be nervous. Thanks. Next time, let me know what Mom likes. Sure, we can go shopping together. Oh, and maybe presenting her with a recommended book would be nice. That's a great idea. We continued to chat casually while eating the delicious dishes and wine, which might have been a bit too much. May days like this last forever. Time has passed, and today is the day we go to greet Ethan's mom. It's our first meeting, so I'm a bit nervous. I got up earlier than usual and made sure to dress neatly. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for coming all this way. Thanks, Mom. This is my wife, Amanda. Nice to meet you. I'm Amanda. As we entered, she led us inside. By the way, Amanda, what do you do? Questions about where I'm from or what my hobbies are came up while we were having casual conversation. And just when I felt at ease, the atmosphere changed slightly. She works as a clerk at a library. A library, huh? Something wrong? No, of course not. It's just that I could see a slight cloud over Olivia's face. I wasn't expecting any remarks about my profession, so my palms started to sweat. Let me be clear, Amanda. You know, living costs in New York are a bit high. That's why I'm a bit worried about the financial aspect. Are you sure you want to stick with this job? She spoke with an apologetic yet sharp tone. I could understand Olivia's concern. It's natural to want a daughter-in-law who earns well, considering the future. Yes, I have no plans to change. Firmly responded because I thought if I didn't share my thoughts with Olivia now, I could never call her mom. Despite the fear, since she's Ethan's mom, I believe she would accept it. I used to work at a toxic company and switched careers to become a librarian. I believe this job allows me to bring happiness to people through books. I've never felt such fulfillment in a job before. That's right, Mom. We met at the library where Amanda works. Books guided us to each other. I'll earn the money, so don't worry. Ethan supported my view and reinforced the words. I take great pride in my work. If we ever run short on money, I'm willing to take on part-time jobs or whatever it takes to keep this job. Though my tone became a bit stronger, I boldly stated my current thoughts. Olivia looked troubled, but nodded deeply. All right, I raised Ethan on my own after losing my husband. I can't just hand him over easily, so I want you to prove it gradually that you are a commendable person. Of course, Mom. I responded with a big smile and a loud voice. The tension that filled the room eased instantly, and a normal conversation began. We both felt relieved as we talked more and more, and it became clear that Olivia is a family-oriented good person. Though my mother-in-law's house is in the neighboring state and we won't be living together, I decided to build a good relationship with her. For the past 15 years, as promised, I've been visiting her regularly. Initially, she seemed quite strict, but each time I brought books, she happily shared her thoughts on them. Eventually, we even started holding regular tea and book club meetings. For a book lover like me, it was the perfect way to relax and bond with her, killing two birds with one stone. Ethan's suggestion to recommend books was something I truly appreciated. Lately, I haven't been able to talk much with Ethan. Our marriage started as a dream, filled with happiness. Ethan was the perfect husband, caring and attentive, helping me forget the loneliness of losing my parents. He used to help with household chores and surprise me with bouquets on our anniversaries. Those days were truly happy. But over the past few years, things have changed. It's normal for the initial excitement to fade, but Ethan's sloppy behavior has become more noticeable. He used to hang the laundry with me, but now he leaves it all to me. Sometimes he doesn't even put the laundry in the machine or leaves his socks inside out. When I point these things out, he insists it's too bothersome and tells me to do it myself if I have a complaint. He's also stopped cleaning up after himself. Hey, Ethan, don't you think you're being a bit cold today? As I looked at the leftover food on the plate, I sighed. I had thought up the menu with his need for more iron and calcium in mind. He used to compliment how delicious it was. Really? You come home late and you don't eat enough. What are you trying to say? Do you think I'm some kind of servant? Asked in a lower voice. Initially, it was understood that doing chores together was part of being married, but now he does nothing. If I don't make dinner, he gets angry and leaves the house. Doing chores while trying to keep Ethan's mood in check has been quite stressful. I've had enough. I don't think that. Then what's with your recent attitude? I'm not just some convenient woman for you. You think I see you that way? Wow, I'm astonished. I thought I was showing my love, but if you don't feel it, fine. Then love that doesn't feel like it at all. What about you? It's because of my salary that we can live in such a nice house. Don't complain. He snapped, then went back to his room. I knelt down, trying to suppress the emotions welling up inside me, and took a deep breath. This kind of thing had become a daily occurrence. Whenever I pointed something out, he would escalate the conversation to make it seem like I was the one at fault. We no longer even sleep in the same bed. I swallowed the word suffocating that almost escaped my throat and began to clear away the remaining food. If only my exhaustion could be washed away with the running water. With that thought, I washed the dishes alone, feeling lonely. A few days later, today is a weekday, but the library is closed, so I have the day off. Since the weather is nice, I asked Olivia if she wanted to go for a walk. She quickly agreed, and it was during our walk in the nearby park, enjoying the pleasant sunshine, that I received a call from Ethan. It's serious, Amanda. Mom seems to have collapsed. What, Olivia? What is he talking about? Olivia is right here next to me. Yeah, that's why I've decided to go back home for a while to check on things. Oh, I see. While I was confused, Olivia, who had heard everything next to me, smiled and whispered, "Keep this between us," putting her index finger to her lips. The atmosphere changed so suddenly I almost exclaimed aloud. Yeah. Oh, but Amanda, you'd have work. It's okay. Don't worry. Calling might stress Mom out, so you don't have to. Really? But Ethan, you have work too, right? It's an emergency with Mom. I'd take time off for it, of course. I see. When will you be back? I'll be back by next Tuesday night. See you. He said and hastily hung up. I clutched my smartphone and stared at the ground. Next to me, Olivia gently placed her hand on mine. Amanda, can you leave it to me from here? My heart was pounding loudly, but Olivia's words calmed me down a bit, and I went home as she suggested. Since then, Olivia and I kept in regular contact and started preparing for various things. Days passed, and as promised, Ethan returned home on Tuesday night. I'm back. Welcome back. How is Olivia? It seems she's not doing very well. I might have to go back and check on her from time to time, so there might be days I can't come home. Really? Ethan said this with a serious expression as he sat on the sofa. I exclaimed almost too dramatically. Yeah, maybe there's only a little time left to spend with Mom, and I want to cherish it. You understand, right? Of course, I'm coming to. No, I'd like it to be just the two of us. It's our last time as mother and son. Besides, Olivia didn't think too highly of you at first. That's my voice trembled. Ethan muttered as if troubled, picking up his smartphone. Seeing Ethan's reaction, I couldn't hold back any longer and burst out laughing, clutching my stomach. Ethan, you're the best. What? What's wrong with you, Amanda? Laughing when someone's parent is supposedly critically ill. What kind of person does that? Ethan angrily stood up, throwing his smartphone carelessly, and advanced towards me with a furious look. I stopped him with my hand and opened the door to the adjacent room. "Who's critically ill?" Out came Olivia herself. Seeing her, Ethan's knees buckled and his face turned pale. In contrast, Olivia, with a fierce look, pressed towards Ethan. "What have you been doing this past week?" "What do you mean?" "As you can see, I'm perfectly fine. What have you been doing?" "Well," Ethan avoided eye contact and stumbled over his words. It was no surprise. Faced with a perfectly healthy Olivia, he couldn't continue his lies. "Hey, Amanda, did you call Mom? I told you it would stress her out, didn't I?" Finding himself unable to say anything else, Ethan unexpectedly directed his anger at me. However, I wasn't afraid as the situation was clearly in my favor. "Look, Ethan, when you called, I was actually walking with Olivia." I showed Ethan the chat history between Olivia and myself. It clearly showed our conversation about going for a walk since I was off work from the library that day and her cheerful agreement. So it was obvious from the start that Ethan was lying. But why? You two weren't that close before. Initially, you complained about Amanda's low salary, right? That was only at first. I was just being mean to test her. What, Olivia? You still brought recommended books and invited me out despite what I said. It's nothing like how you never come home. Olivia spoke in an exasperated tone, and Ethan had nothing to retort. How could I know that? Besides, why didn't Amanda tell me? I did tell you at first, but lately you haven't even tried to talk to me. Originally, there was no intention to hide anything, but Ethan's refusal to listen had backfired on him. If he had known about the bond between Olivia and me, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. Ethan looked down, clearly frustrated. His phone vibrated, but he was too exhausted to care. "Remember, Ethan, when I worked at that toxic company and told you about helping an old lady in front of the eye clinic? That was what made me switch jobs." "I think I remember. That was me. It's a small world, isn't it?" "Indeed. That was the major event that brought Olivia and me closer." When we were having tea and reminiscing about the past, Olivia suddenly exclaimed, "That was me," with wide-open eyes and a shocked expression. At that time, Olivia was suffering from a complex eye condition and had come to the city for surgery. However, after the surgery, she got lost and someone approached her to help. Due to the eye drops from the surgery, her vision wasn't clear, so she couldn't see the person's face. She didn't recognize me, but hearing the story confirmed it for her. That time, I was so happy to meet the person who helped me again. Thanks to that, we've become really close. I was too tired at that time to notice anyone's face. I've always wondered if she made it home safely, thanks to you. Well, now to my son, it seems I'm just a sick person not long for this world. Maybe next time you should be the one getting a surgery. Usually, Ethan is quick to assert dominance, but clearly he couldn't win against his own mother and struggled to find words, his mouth opening and closing without making a sound. Just then, the door to the next room opened again, and a woman's voice called out, "Ethan." "Sophia." "Good evening, since yesterday, right?" Sophia greeted him with a sad smile. She was a delicate woman, slightly younger than me, with well-defined features and a floral dress that suited her perfectly. Seeing her tremble slightly stirred a protective feeling in me. Could see why Ethan was attracted to her. Why is Sophia here? After we said goodbye yesterday, I went home and these people were there. They told me everything. You were married, huh? How did you? I hired a detective agency. They found out everything in 1 week. Just after Ethan called me a week ago, Olivia sent me home and immediately headed to a detective agency. She said no expense was too great to investigate her son's alleged affair. The results came quickly. They gathered evidence and located the home of Sophia, the other woman involved. "Ethan, you used to get along with my parents, didn't you? They are very upset, as am I, and I brought you here today because I want to resolve this." Sophia explained it turned out Sophia was a business associate and they had fallen in love at first sight. She had not known Ethan was married and said she would never have pursued anything had she known. Her parents, who had been considering Ethan as a potential son-in-law, were furious once they learned the truth. They apologized to me sincerely. Though Sophia and her parents were innocent, it pained me that they felt the need to apologize, fueling my anger towards Ethan further. So I apologized to the three of them and suggested we meet here today. This means all of Ethan's affairs have been exposed. I'll give you the lawyer contact details later, and you can handle it through them. How do you expect to live without me? The cost of living has skyrocketed. You can't survive on your salary alone. Ethan glared at me, his anger seemingly erupting. Despite my body tensing up at his threat, Olivia stepped forward to intervene. Actually, I've started doing this, she said, showing Ethan a screen on her phone. What's this? I've recently started investing in real estate. It's been quite profitable, so even though the detective agency was expensive, it didn't really hurt financially. The screen displayed a graph of her investment returns. Olivia had studied a bit beforehand, and her investments were hugely successful. With my help, using the knowledge I gained from university and my love of books, her earnings surely surpassed Ethan's salary by now. So you don't need to worry about money on this side. You should be more concerned about yourself, as you'll soon be living in poverty. That's a joke. No, it's quite standard since you committed adultery. Ethan, unable to accept this reality, suddenly stood up with a sneer. Too bad, Amanda. I have Mom's inheritance. I'll be back to my old life soon. How did my son become so foolish? Olivia, watching Ethan's ludicrous declaration, held her head in dismay. Mom, please, it's a serious crisis for your beloved son. Help me out here. Ethan, you are indeed my dear son. However, I don't recall raising you to be such a heartless person. What? I'm cutting ties. From now on, live on your own. What about the inheritance? I'm thinking of giving it to Amanda. I couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Although I knew she was considering disowning him, she hadn't mentioned the inheritance. The thought that she valued me so much, having lost my own parents, was overwhelmingly touching. Amanda, if you don't mind, would you like to become my real daughter? Those words warmed me instantly. It was everything I had hoped to hear. I felt so lonely since my parents died. Are you sure? Of course, dear. I'm looking forward to our future together. Without hesitation, I ran into her open arms. Oh, the warmth of a mother's embrace. Today was supposed to be the worst day of my life, yet it turned out to be the best. Watching us, Ethan erupted. That's it, Amanda. You planned this all along to get at Mom's inheritance. Faced with his outrageous accusations, I simply said, You brought this on yourself. Feeling a weight lift off my shoulders, I knew that from now on I could live freely with Olivia without being tied down by Ethan. By the way, this has been ringing, Sophia said, handing Ethan his vibrating phone. As he answered, a voice yelled, You're fired, from the other end. Problems with a client? Marriage fraud? That must be some mistake. Ethan frantically tried to explain, but the call was quickly disconnected, leaving him powerless. In front of a deflated Ethan stood only Sophia, smiling as before. Sophia, you're on my side, right? Ethan reached out to her desperately, but Sophia shook him off. Ethan, I once married a terrible man and thought I found happiness with you. But you turned out to be the same. I reported you to the company. Goodbye. With that, Sophia walked toward the door, followed by Olivia. Facing what must have been Ethan's utter despair, I handed him the divorce papers filled out on my behalf and left the house. Ethan surrendered so easily that our divorce was finalized without much fuss. Olivia and I moved to a new place to avoid any potential harassment from Ethan. From what I've heard through the grapevine, Ethan has been struggling to find a new job. It's no surprise given that we've spread the word about his misconduct, making it difficult for him to get a job in the same industry. He's probably living a tough life now. Good morning. Good morning, Amanda. It's a beautiful day. How about a picnic in the big park? That sounds lovely. Let's make some sandwiches to take with us. Meanwhile, we lived peacefully at home, studying real estate investment and visiting the library often. On weekends, we'd go out, discuss books, and enjoy our free time together. Our investments kept succeeding, and Mom's savings steadily grew. Spending time with my beloved books and my dear Mom made me truly happy.
Sitting in the dimly lit living room, I clutched a photo of my late husband, Elliot. The silence was only broken by the soft ticking of the grandfather clock, a constant reminder of the time that had slipped away since his passing. Across from me, Helena, my mother-in-law, sat knitting quietly. Her presence always brought a comforting sense of stability. The door swung open, shattering the stillness. Raymond, my new husband, strode in with a grin that stretched ear to ear. "Cora, you won't believe what I've found." His voice was laced with excitement. I looked up, my heart heavy. "What is it, Raymond?" "It's a mansion, Cora. A magnificent mansion. Just imagine us living there. It's only $3 million, a steal for a place like that." His eyes sparkled with a fervor that I hadn't seen before. "A mansion?" My voice was a mere whisper, disbelief coloring my tone. "Raymond, how could we possibly afford that?" He leaned in, his smile widening. "We'll use the insurance money from Elliot. It's perfect." The room seemed to spin. That money was all I had left of Elliot. "But that money, it's meant for my future security," I managed to say, gripping the photo tighter. "Cora, darling, it's just money, and what better way to use it than to secure our luxurious future?" Raymond's dismissiveness struck a nerve. Helena stopped knitting, her gaze sharp. "Raymond, that money was meant for Cora's well-being, not for such extravagance." He dismissed her with a wave of his hand. "Helena, you worry too much. It's a good investment. Cora agrees with me, right?" I felt cornered, his expectant eyes pressing down on me. Memories of Elliot, our dreams and love, seemed to be fading away, overshadowed by Raymond's grand plans. "Raymond, do we really need something so extravagant?" My voice shook, betraying my inner turmoil. "Trust me, Cora. This is our future. A new beginning," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I glanced at the photo in my hands, then at Raymond's eager face, and finally at Helena. Her expression held concern and a hint of disappointment. Doubt crept into my heart, a growing sense that the life I had envisioned with Raymond was slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. I tried to make peace with the decision, but the mansion loomed in my mind like a gilded cage. The following weeks were a blur of Raymond making arrangements. He seemed oblivious to my growing unease and Helena's silent disapproval. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Raymond's daughter, Nora, came into the kitchen. At 17, she carried a rebellious streak that made her hard to connect with. "So we're moving into a mansion, huh?" she said, her tone laced with a sarcasm that I wasn't prepared for. "Yes, it seems so," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Nora leaned against the counter, eyeing me with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "Must be nice, stepping up in the world thanks to someone else's money." Her words stung, and I struggled to maintain my composure. "Nora, it's not like that. It's complicated." "Sure, whatever you say, Cora," she dismissed, grabbing an apple and leaving the room as abruptly as she had entered. That night, Raymond was unusually quiet at dinner. Helena barely spoke, her disapproval of the situation hanging heavily in the air. The tension was palpable. After dinner, Raymond cornered me in the living room. "Cora, we need to talk about the house. There are some papers that need your signature." I tensed. "Papers? What kind of papers?" "Just some formalities for the purchase. You know, since it's your money that's paying for it," he said casually. My heart raced. "Raymond, I'm not comfortable with this. It's all happening so fast." He frowned, his patience wearing thin. "Cora, we've been over this. It's a great opportunity. Don't be so sentimental about the money." "But it's not just the money, Raymond. It's what it represents," I protested, my voice rising. He stepped closer, his expression hardening. "Cora, you're my wife. It's your duty to support my decisions. We're doing this, and that's final. I recoiled from his words. They felt like a betrayal, a stark reminder of how little he respected me or my feelings. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling trapped in a life that was spiraling out of my control. The day we moved into the mansion was surreal. The grandeur of the place couldn't mask the hollow feeling in my heart. Raymond was like a child, gleaming with pride, while Helena's sadness was palpable, her usual warmth replaced by a cold resignation. I was arranging some books in the living room when Raymond strutted in, his demeanor more arrogant than ever. "Cora, now that we're here, there are going to be some changes," he declared, a smug smile playing on his lips. I paused, a sense of dread washing over me. "What kind of changes?" "Well, for starters, I think it's only fitting that you take care of the house. After all, a mansion needs a proper housekeeper," he said, his eyes gleaming with a cruel amusement. I stared at him, disbelief and anger mingling in my chest. "You want me to be the housekeeper? In my own home?" He laughed, a cold, heartless sound. "Your home? No, Cora, this is my house. You're just living in it. And as for being a housekeeper, well, it's not like you have much else to do." I felt a surge of anger. "Raymond, I am your wife, not your servant." His expression turned icy. "You're whatever I say you are. And right now, I say you're the housekeeper. You should be grateful I'm even allowing you to stay here." Helena, having overheard the conversation, entered the room, her expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Raymond, you can't be serious. Treating Cora like this, it's inhumane." He turned to Helena, his eyes cold. "And you, Helena, I don't even know why you're still here. You're not my family. Frankly, you're just a burden." The words cut through the air like a knife. I could see the pain in Helena's eyes, the insult too much to bear. We were both prisoners in a gilded cage, our dignity stripped away by a man we once trusted. That night, as I lay in bed, the mansion felt more like a tomb. Raymond's true nature had revealed itself, a monster hiding behind a mask of charm. I realized then that I couldn't live like this, not under his control. A plan began to form in my mind, a way to escape this nightmare. Revenge wasn't just a fleeting thought anymore. It was a necessity. The days that followed were a blur of emotional turmoil. Raymond's tyranny over the house grew each day, and his disdain for both Helena and me became more blatant. It was during these dark days that Helena and I found solace in each other's company, plotting our escape from this gilded prison. One evening, as we sat in the dimly lit kitchen, Helena spoke up, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "Cora, we can't live like this any longer. We need to leave, to find our own way." I nodded, feeling a spark of hope amidst the despair. "I've been thinking the same, Helena, but where would we go? Raymond has control over everything." Helena reached across the table, taking my hand. "The insurance money, Cora, we use it to buy a place of our own, a condo, something modest but ours. We leave Raymond and this mansion behind." The idea was daring, almost reckless, but it ignited a fire within me. "But the money, it's tied up in this mansion now," I said, the weight of our situation pressing down on me. Helena shook her head. "No, my dear, only a portion of it. There's still enough left. We were careful, remember? We can do this." The plan was simple yet bold. We would secretly purchase a condo, a place where we could start anew, free from Raymond's shadow. The thought of taking back control, of reclaiming my life, was exhilarating. Over the next few weeks, we moved cautiously, meeting with real estate agents and lawyers under the guise of mundane errands. Each step we took was a step closer to freedom. The day we signed the papers for the condo was a day of quiet triumph. Raymond, lost in his own egotistical world, remained oblivious to our plans. The night before we were set to leave, I couldn't sleep. The anticipation of a new beginning, mixed with the fear of Raymond's reaction, kept me awake. I knew the confrontation would be inevitable and likely explosive. As dawn broke, I packed my bags, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. Helena was already waiting for me, her bags packed, her face determined. "We can do this, Cora. It's time," she said, her voice a mix of courage and defiance. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's go. Let's take back our lives." We left the mansion quietly, slipping away into the early morning light. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was ours to shape. Settling into the condo felt like a breath of fresh air. Helena and I reveled in our newfound freedom, the weight of Raymond's oppression lifting from our shoulders. However, I knew this peace would be short-lived once Raymond discovered our absence. It wasn't long before my phone rang, Raymond's name flashing on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I braced myself and answered. "Where the hell are you?" Raymond's voice was a mix of rage and disbelief. "I've left, Raymond. Helena and I both have." "We're not coming back," I said, my voice steady despite the racing of my heart. "You what? You can't just leave. That house, it's in your name, the bills, everything." His voice was frantic, tinged with panic. "That's no longer my concern. I won't be a part of your twisted game any longer," I replied, feeling a surge of empowerment with each word. "You ungrateful. Do you have any idea what you've done? You'll ruin me." Raymond's voice was rising, his words laced with venom. "That was never my intention, Raymond, but I refuse to be your prisoner, your housekeeper. I deserve better, and so does Helena," I said firmly. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the gears turning in Raymond's mind. "You'll pay for this, Cora. You think you can just walk away? I'll make sure you regret this." I felt a chill at his words, but my resolve was unshaken. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Raymond. Goodbye." With that, I hung up, cutting off his tirades. In the following days, Raymond's attempts to contact me became more desperate. He left voicemails, each more aggressive than the last, demanding that I return and fix the mess I had left behind. But I was done being his victim. Each message he left only strengthened my resolve. Helena and I started to rebuild our lives, our bond stronger than ever. The news eventually came that Raymond was facing financial ruin. The mansion, with its exorbitant costs, had become his undoing. His social standing crumbled as the truth of his behavior, and our departure became known. I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. Raymond had brought this upon himself, yet I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. He was a man undone by his own greed and cruelty. But this was his battle to fight, not mine. Helena and I had chosen a different path, one of freedom and dignity. We had escaped the shadow of the mansion, and in its place, we found light. Life in the condo with Helena was serene, a stark contrast to the turmoil we had left behind. Our days were filled with small joys and newfound freedoms. Yet, the shadow of Raymond still lingered in the back of my mind, an uncomfortable reminder of the past. One evening, as Helena and I enjoyed coffee in our cozy living room, my phone rang. Seeing Raymond's name on the screen again made my heart sink. "Hello, Raymond," I said, steeling myself for another barrage of insults. "Cora, please, you have to help me." Raymond's voice was different this time, tinged with desperation. "Help you? Raymond, after everything, why would I ever—" I started, but he cut me off. "The mansion, it's falling apart. I can't afford the upkeep, the taxes. I'm drowning here. I need you to come back. We can start over," he pleaded. Start over? The audacity of his request left me speechless. The man who had tried to reduce me to a housekeeper now wanted salvation from me. "Raymond, I'm not coming back. You made your bed, now lie in it," I said firmly. "But Cora, I'm nothing without you. You don't understand the mess I'm in. Please." His voice cracked, a far cry from the domineering man I once knew. "Raymond, you chose this path. You chose to treat me and Helena like we were disposable. You can't expect me to fix the consequences of your actions," I replied, my voice unwavering. There was a heavy silence on the line before Raymond spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Cora. I never meant for things to go this far. I miss you." His words, laden with regret, might have once moved me, but now they only served as a reminder of the pain he had caused. "Goodbye, Raymond," I said, hanging up the phone. Helena, who had been listening, reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing, Cora. We have each other, and that's all we need." As I looked around our modest condo, I realized she was right. We had escaped Raymond's clutches and found something far more valuable: peace, independence, and a bond that no amount of money could buy. Raymond's downfall was of his own making, a result of his greed and cruelty. It was a harsh lesson in karma, one that he would have to learn on his own. Helena and I turned our gaze towards the future, one filled with hope and free from the shadows of the past. We had each other, and that was more than enough.